Hi class. So today we're going to talk about converting units. But let's first define what I mean by converting units. So we know that converting means to change from one thing to another. And we've become familiar with units in our lessons this week. So examples of units or units of measurement would be pounds, right? How much someone weighs or how much something weighs. Ounces, which is a smaller measurement than pounds. We've also looked at miles, distance we've traveled. We've also looked at kilometers. So these are all different units of measurement. And what we're going to do today is we're going to explore how can we convert one unit of measurement into another unit of measurement. For example, converting pounds into ounces, or kilometers into miles, or the other way around, ounces to pounds or kilometers to miles. So we're going to explore that today by working through a word problem I've created. So the word problem I've created reads like this. Mr. B wants to make a batch of Gatorade for his teammates, but the recipe calls for liters and he only has a small measuring cup for ounces. On the Gatorade jug, however, he sees that 3 liters equals 96 ounces. How could Mr. B measure the correct amount for his teammates? So Mr. B doesn't have a liter jug, but we know that he has a small measuring cup for ounces, right? So when we're looking at problems like this, we need to see what is the key information. We know the recipe calls for liters, but we only have a cup to measure ounces. Fortunately, we see that for every 3 liters, there are 96 ounces. So when I look at problems like this, I think, what is the key information I can use to help me solve the problem? The problem here is that his teammates want a certain amount of Gatorade in liters. So his first teammate, we find out, wants 1 liter of Gatorade. Another one wants half a liter. And another one wants 2 3/4 of a liter. So when we're looking at this problem, we need to figure out, how can we solve for this? And a great place to start, what we've been exploring, is looking at ratios. What is the ratio of liters to ounces? And looking at this problem, I know the ratio of liters to ounces is 3 to 96. So we're going to use this information to help us solve this problem. Okay? So what we're going to use today to solve it is we're going to use a ratio table, which many of you are familiar with and use to solve your own problems. This is not the only way to solve for these type of problems. You're also welcome to use a double number line. Some of you might just divide by the number to find it out. Whatever strategy works for you, please use it, okay? So for today's purposes, I'm going to use a ratio table. When I create a ratio table, I also like to make as many boxes as I can because I never know how much math I'm going to have to actually do. So I'm going to create quite a few today. So the first thing in a ratio table we always do is we want to label what we have. So we have liters and we have ounces, okay? So we know we have 3 liters, 96 ounces. There's our ratio. However, I don't have any teammates that want 3 liters of Gatorade. So this information right here by itself is not going to help me. However, we're trying to find how much 1 liter. How many ounces am I going to need to measure out to get 1 liter of Gatorade? So I look at this, and what I can do is I'm going to multiply by 1/3. We know that multiplying by 1/3 is the same as dividing by 3, but when we're using ratio tables, I want us to use fractions and multiplying by fractions, okay? So we know 3 times 1/3 equals 1. If I do 96 times 1/3, for some of you, this may be quick math, and that's fantastic. But for others, though, that may be a little bit more difficult, let's come up with a strategy to work through this. So when I get tough numbers, I always like to make them friendlier, make them easier. So I break up 96 into 90 and 6. So now instead of doing 96 times 1/3, I'm doing 90 and 6. So 90 divided by 3, 90 times 1/3 gives me 30. And 6 divided by 3, 6 times 1/3 equals 2. 30 plus 2 equals 32. So 96 times 1/3 equals 32. Great. So we've solved this. We've solved for 1 liter. We know that it is 32 ounces. Check that one off. Now we got to find a half a liter. So let's go to a half a liter right here. Going from our 1, we found the rate per 1. For every 32 ounces, we have 1 liter. So this is going to be our anchor. This is going to be the number we always come back to when we need to solve problems. Whenever I get stuck, I always come back to the 1 to help me out. So we're going from here, we're going to multiply by 1/2. So 1 times 1/2 equals 1/2. 32 times 1/2 divided by 2 is 16. So we've solved for the second one. My other teammate wants 16 ounces. Now we're getting to 2 3/4. 2 3/4 is tricky because none of these numbers go easily into 2 3/4. So I'm going to have to take a couple other steps to get there. So as I said previously, whenever I get stuck, I always go back to my 1. So I'm looking at 1 and I'm trying to find a way I can get to this. When I get fractions that are tough, I always like to, again, decompose them into friendlier numbers. So I break it up into 2 3/4. So let's solve for 2 first because it's a bit easier to do so. We're going to multiply by 2 to give us 2. Multiply 32 by 2. That'll give us 64. So we've solved our 2. Now we have to find our 3/4. Now, we don't have anything that goes into 3/4 here easily. But what we could do is we could always go back to our 1, right? And I'm going to go back to my 1, and I'm going to multiply 1 by 1/4. And the reason why I do that is because I want to get a number here that has the same denominator, right? That has the same parts. So I know 1/4 goes into 3/4, right? So I go 32 times 1/4. 32 divided by 4. 32 times 1/4 is 8. Now, I know that when I'm doing math for this here, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Or 3 times 1/4 equals 3/4. Okay, so I'm going to multiply by 3 to get 3/4 and 3 to get 24. So now I have 3/4 and I have 2. So if I add these up together and I add these two up, it's going to be 64 plus 24, and I'm going to get 88 ounces. So for this problem, we know that 2 3/4 liters is equal to 88 ounces. 88 ounces. So we had to take a few extra steps to solve for this last one, but again, we're always able to go back to our 1 to help us out, right? Always want to go back to our 1. Now, a point I want to make when you're solving for ratio tables is that if you get to a point in the table where you know what to take next, you know, hey, I want to divide 3 by 3 to get 1, and I want to divide 96 by 3, but I don't know how to do 96 divided by 3. That math's too hard for me. That's okay. I know that you understand the problem. If you're stuck on the computation, on solving those little bits of math, it's okay to use a calculator in this case. So if you're not sure what 96 times 1/3 is, use a calculator. That's okay with me. Or use a multiplication table if you have one as well. So don't let the multiplication and division trick you up. If you know how to solve this table and you know what you want to do, but this is holding you up, use a calculator, okay? So this is an example of how we can solve problems like this, where we're converting units, okay? You're also welcome to use a double number line. You may just divide the numbers and do 96 divided by 3. There are multiple ways to solve this, but this is, I think, a very popular way and a very efficient and clear way to solve for these kind of problems. So what I want you to do, and this will be a homework assignment for you, is I want you to solve, using this problem I've given you, I want you to solve for 2 small equations here. 2 more teammates come up. One asks for 1/3 of a liter of Gatorade, and the other one asks for 3 1/8 liter of Gatorade. Using the information provided and using maybe the ratio table I used before or a double number line, solve for these problems. When you solve for these problems and shown your work, I want you to go to your Trello card and I want you to upload your work. Your work plus your explanation. So writing down just the answer is not going to be adequate enough. I want you to show your math and your reasoning as to how you got this. If you just divided by a couple numbers, that's okay. Show me your reasoning. Upload your work explanation to your card. So this is your homework to do and complete by the time we have class on Thursday. All right. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in class. I hope this helps you, and I will see you then.